The 13th Shelf. Investigations into the underground world of the occult. In Berkeley, California, an occult scholar and ruthless skeptic, Sebastian Darrow, runs a boutique detective agency that investigates supernatural claims around the globe. He's a ferocious bibliophile with the world's deepest private archive in parapsychology and the occult. With a tight four-person team, he exposes frauds, comforts the misled, and once in a while finds something that refuses to be explained. Episode 2. The Golem That Didn't Walk. Cold open, Yosifov, Prague, 2:07. The night is crisp enough to draw a line around every sound. Air vents hum. The cobbles on Cervena Street hold the days cold like a grudge. A security camera on a robotics lab's loading bay captures a modest apocalypse. A patrol bot makes a tidy turn, then spasms. Its wheels seize. It lurches forward like an animal entering water it misjudged and rams a stair. Plastic sings against stone. Inside, a server rack blinks politely. Across the district, outside the Old-New Synagogue, a tourist video shudders into existence. In the pane of ancient glass, bubbled obstinate, a giant shadow lumbers where no one stands. The phone's mic catches a whisper in English. It's the Golem. The shadow tilts its head, a beat too theatrical, and dissolves into the reflection of a tram passing 2 streets away. Cut to black. Scene 1. The Loft, Darrow Inquiry, midday. Berkeley wears its sun like a relief map. Inside the loft, books organize themselves into reefs. Spiritualism, pamphlets 1860 to 1900, debunkers' notebooks, parapsychology journals. A black vault door glints with the vanity of steel. A whiteboard carries an afterimage of last week's case. 13/S, Alonso and Lyle, Telegraph, 13-1. Sebastian Darrow, tall, jacket hung just so, a librarian's patience hiding in a detective's posture, stands with a legal pad. He is the kind of reader who takes notes without looking down. Across from him, Dr. Hanna Vulk, director of CIIR, the Czech Institute for Intelligent Robotics. She puts a phone on the table like a confession and taps the tourist clip. Shadow, glass, murmurs. She swipes to the loading bay video, the bot's neat self-destruction. "We have donors," she says in English smooth as the Vltava, "who love stories. Some are talking about legends instead of logs. My board asked for an independent look, discreet. Not the police, not the press, I was told," she adds, a glance at the vault. "You collect strange claims the way museums collect everything else." Sebastian smiles a little at collect. "You brought the right problem to the wrong myth," he says, "but we'll be kind to both." With him, Mei Lin Zhao in a vest that looks like a pocket exploded, Imani Okonkwo clipboard and calm, Rafe Torres, charm at rest, and Dr. Indira Narayan on a laptop tile, hair pinned with a pencil that refuses to stay ordinary. Rafe watches the clip again. "The shadow knows where to stand," he says. "It plays the glass like an instrument." Maylin points at the bot footage. "Those wheels lock like somebody asked them to draw a straight line to the stair." "What's your update mechanism?" Hana exhales. "We have a testbed of patrol bots, OTA updates on a closed network, air-gapped from production." "Is your air made of Ethernet?" Indira asks from the screen. Hana's mouth twitches. "There are holes in our air." Sebastian flips a page. "How often do golem stories ride your neighborhood?" "Always," Hana says. "Usually they ride tourists. The synagogue will not appreciate its windows being cast in someone else's play." "Then we start with a courtesy call," Sebastian says. "We don't work stories at people, we work them with them." Hana looks relieved. "Our operations manager, Thomas, will meet you at the lab. He is practical. He is worried. He will be your friend if you are practical and worried." "Two of our best features," Rafe says. Sebastian gathers his case. "Tonight, we fly. Tomorrow, we walk." Scene 2. Courtesy. The Old-New Synagogue's stones hold history without asking permission to do so. The caretaker, Jakub Benari, meets them in an office with orderly dust and a desk that has known serious conversations. "You are not the first to come when a camera sees something it was primed to see," Jakub says. His accent is the city's, with long vowels that have learned 3 languages and forgave 2. I'm not opposed to legends. Legends are how some people explain obligations, but if a company uses our windows for advertising, then we have a different conversation, Sebastian says. We're not here to give the Golem a LinkedIn page. Jakub smiles. Good. Are you religious? About paper, Sebastian says, and about not lying to the vulnerable. Also about locks, Malin adds. Jakub nods. Then you may work. I will ask you to share your findings with us before you publish anyone's pride. Done, Sebastian says. Outside, on Myzalova Street, Rafe watches the glass from the tourist clip. Ancient panes make 1,000 tiny mirrors. He snaps photos from 10 angles, then from a point almost no one would choose, across the street, low to the ground, as if he'd lost a coin there. In his photo, a tram's reflection inflates to the shape of a giant that never lived. Camera height is a character, he says. Scene 3, CIIR, loading bay. The lab is a glass box wearing stone shoes. Inside, a demo track, server room, 3 patrol bots on stands that look like contrition, and a staff that floats between guilt and grievance. Tomas Kola, operations manager, extends a hand built for solving problems with and without tools. You are the people who will make me unpopular, he says, smiling like he hopes to be wrong. We specialize in unpopular truths, Sebastian says. Tomas gestures at the wounded bot. You saw the video. We replaced the one that broke its neck. It was configured to refuse stairs. It sought stairs like a pilgrim. What changed? Malin asks. Firmware rolled back at 158, Tomas says. A gap in the log, then an integrity check, passed. The bot went blind to edges. Roll back to what version? Indira asks, voice tinny from a portable speaker. 0.9C, Tomas says. A dev build from last quarter. There is no reason for it to be in the system. Who had access? Imani asks. Tomas spreads his hands. Who did not? Hannah appears in the doorway with a woman in her 40s, hair in a hurry, sleeves rolled. Doctor. Barbora Sedlakova, head of autonomy. She looks at Sebastian like she expects to teach him something and will only forgive him if he learns it quickly. We don't need a ghost, Barbara says. We need an audit. You might get both, Sebastian says. And a shadow. He kneels by the damaged bot, eyes scanning seams the way a bookman reads a gutter. He takes a small penlight and follows residue around a wheel hub. Kaolin, he says. Barbora cocks her head. Clay? Glycerin too, he says, rubbing a bit between gloved fingers. Theatrical mud, the kind that holds a footprint long enough to tell a story. Rafe finds a faint smudge on the loading bay threshold. If I were staging a myth, he says, I'd give you prints to find. Someone left us breadcrumbs, Imani says. Someone needs to be believed. Or paid, Tomas mutters. Sebastian stands. Method, he says, half to the team, half to the room. 1. Triage, logs, access, noise. 2. Reconstruction, show how to make the ghost walk without a soul. 3. Forensics, materials, chain of custody. 4. Truth and aftercare. Aftercare? Tomas asks. When people turn fear into a hobby, you need an exit plan, Rafe says. Otherwise it comes back as a personality. Scene 4. The air that isn't. They build a small camp on a rolling table. SDRs, a spectrum analyzer, a laptop running a modest IDS, a thermal camera, a 3D printed clip for a bot's debug port that Malin made on the flight because it calms her. Indira listens. I have narrowband spikes in 433 megahertz, she says, and BLE advertisements playing musical chairs. Someone's spoofing more than one thing. Malin clips her printed jig to a sacrificial bot. Your dev boards expose SWD, she says to Barbara, with the pity of a magician watching an amateur cut the wrong knot. Disable that in production. Barbara grimaces. We never bother on test units. The ghost doesn't care which unit wears a test sticker, Malin says lightly. The ghost wants an audience. Imani wanders to a staff lounge that has ideas about being a reading room. Books that haven't moved in years keep the room's shape. On a shelf, English, Czech, German robotics texts, and incongruously a small clutch of old Judeo-German pamphlets in Yiddish, the edges browned into crispness. A sign above them says, Don't move, don't touch, unless you're Irina, in a hand that wants to be funny and knows it's only sometimes. Who is Irina? Imani asks Tomas. Archivist at the Jewish Museum, he says. She helps us with a community education program. We borrowed those for a workshop on old letters, new machines. We cannot persuade her to call it anything less charming. Imani leans in without touching. One pamphlet's margin has a faint ghost of reversed letters, like ink that transferred in sleep. She makes a cataloguer's hum. May I take a photo under oblique? She asks. Tomas nods. If you show her later. She angles a light and coaxes tiny shadows to tell the truth. On the outer margin, reversed and weak, a Latin line crosses the older Yiddish. Supplemental catalogue, Shelf XIII. Imani's breath is the smallest thing in the room and the most interesting. Sebastian, she calls, quiet but pointed. He joins her. The line is half a dream and enough. Offset, he says, pressed long against a fresh print, wrong direction to be primary. Paper stock? She asks. He squints at the chain lines, the anyone but paper would not care detail. Laid, not wove. Look for a watermark later. If it's our bell in a box. He doesn't finish. What is that? Thomas asks. A roomer's fingerprint, Sebastian says. We'll borrow the pamphlet for an hour, with permission, and give it back with better friends. Barbora peers over his shoulder. You're chasing two cases. It's one, Imani says. Someone's staging a myth in your lab. Meanwhile, someone else, or the same someone, has been staging breadcrumbs in our lives for months. Barbara looks like she wants another lab. Scene 5, the walk, night. They stand where the tourist stood. Rafe films while holding his phone lower than Pride. A tram glides past. In the glass, a giant lifts his head. Rafe shows the clip to Jakub outside the synagogue office. It's a tram wearing an old window, he says. Shot from a child's height, your pains turn city machinery into something with shoulders. Jakub watches once, then again. The angle, he says. Tourists never know they are conjuring. You have told a truer story without humiliating anyone. He looks pleased and tired. Now tell me about the lab. Someone rolled a bot back and wrote theatre in mud, Sebastian says. We'll show them how it was done. We'll tell them who did it, we'll recommend how to stop it, and we'll ask them to stop talking about you as if you were their prop. Good, Jakub says, and the pamphlet. Offset from a century younger page, Sebastian says. It smells like our season. Jakub holds his eyes. Make sure your season does not make a meal of ours. We won't, Sebastian says. Scene 6, the shadow that isn't. Maylin commandeers a corner of the demo track and sets 2 tripods. On one, a bright narrow beam LED. On the other, a sheet of retro-reflective material cut into a ragged square, the kind used on safety vests and road signs, its beads waiting for a job. She hangs the retroreflector on a rolling whiteboard and pushes it down the corridor to a spot visible from the lab's front window. Old glass plus retroreflector plus distant narrow beam equals a compliant ghost, she says. Even better if you add a scrim of humidity. She dims the lights, kills a few pragmatically, and calls to Rafe, who is outside on the sidewalk, his phone at tourist height. Ready? Ready, Rafe says. She angles the beam through the window. In the old panes across the street, a shadow is born. It is tall because light obeys geometry. It is uncanny because reflection knits it with the city's own seams. Maylin switches the LED off and on with a small flourish. The shadow bows. Sebastian watches the brightness and its undressing. You, he says to Tomas, have a neighbor who can do this with more toys and less courtesy. Tomas looks sick. We have glass. You have a city that plays, Rafe says. It's a kindness and a trap. Indira's voice crackles from the portable speaker. I have your playing neighbor, she says. Narrowband ping at 4:33 during your bot event came from an antenna 2 rooftops over. I asked a friend to check. Guess who leases space there? Tomas is already shaking his head. Please don't say our competitor. I won't, Indira says, because it is worse and better. Vale Experiential, SRO. Crispin Vale, Imani says, not happy to be right this often. Again. Hannah's jaw goes tight. We did not hire him. You don't have to hire people who want to be paid in reputation, Sebastian says. They hire you. Scene 7, the palimpsest, morning. Irina Weiss, the archivist, arrives at the lab reading room carrying a canvas bag and an expression that balances delight with professional exasperation. You took photographs of my pamphlet, she says to Imani, eyes bright. Good. Now we do it properly. Imani grins. Marry me. Absolutely not, Irina says, affectionate. But yes, let's make a sandwich. They build the safest possible setup. Mylar supports, a low-heat, low-angle light, a camera on a copy stand. The Yiddish pamphlet, a Gesprach wegen Immune, is humble and proud. Along the outer margin, reversed Latin letters appear under raking light like shy guests at a party. Irina takes a cotton swab and with permission rolls it over a blank corner. She tests for solubility. She nods to herself. The offset is dry, she says. Likely press contact. The reversed English reads Supplemental Catalogue, Shelf XIII. There is a line in small Hebrew, TVSPT MDPEG, a literal mirror. Not good Yiddish, not good Hebrew. Someone copied without respect for grammar. Printer's apprentice, Imani asks. Or a faker who didn't have a friend, Irina says. She picks up the pamphlet gently, tips it toward an open window's light. There. In the paper, water left a memory. A bell inside a square, small and neat. Sebastian takes a breath he hadn't planned to take. Bell in a box, he says. San Francisco Mill. 1920s stock. In Prague, Irina says, delighted and skeptical. The archivist cocktail. Your ghost travels well. Or your pamphlet travelled later, Imani says. We'll check history of foreign repair work. Was it used as a liner for a later binding? Did it sleep against a Bay Area catalogue in someone's portmanteau across 30 years? Irina smiles. You speak like people who will respect a story if it refuses to be efficient. Occupational hazard, Sebastian says. May we borrow a high-res image of this offset for our file? We'll credit you. We'll share our notes. You may, Irina says, and you will come to dinner tomorrow. My wife cooks like a reasonable person. She will tell you to stop making trouble and then feed the trouble. We accept, Rafe says, already in love with dinner. Scene 8, Audit. Tomas assembles a modest crowd. Barbora, autonomy. Pavel Kolar, postdoc, shoulders crushed under someone else's resume. Eva Safarova, security lead. And a serif of interns who look like curiosity in sneakers. Sebastian runs them through a short course. Firmware. Mailin shows how an unsecured SWD port can roll back a build if someone with hands and a jig is in the room. Lock debug, she says, with the mercy of a surgeon whose advice saves fingers. Network. Indira grants them the gift of fear in a chart. Your OTA server listens where it should not, she says. It accepted a signed bundle because your certificate logic is performative, not protective. Whoever is pushing 433 pings is not your villain. They are your hype man. The villain took an old key and asked an unlocked door to be a play. Perception. Sebastian wheels in a cart with a laser pointer and a sheet of cheap plastic. He demonstrates how a modulated IR source outside a field of view can make LIDAR report false edges. We don't need to do this to your bots, he says, because someone already did something easier. They told the bot to be stupid. Mud. Imani hands around a sealed vial with a touch of dried residue. Kaolin with glycerin and iron oxide, she says. A theatre recipe, not a river. Whoever left you footprints bought their myth in a craft store. Reflection. Rafe plays the tram trick on a projector. He overlays the tourist video and their reenactment. Your ghost is a geometry problem, he says. All it needed was a camera angle and permission. Barbora looks at Pavel during the certificate slide. He looks at his shoes while thinking about which facial expression makes guilt feel like someone else's decision. Eva clears her throat. I've seen 2 OTP tokens clipped to this lanyard, she says, lifting Pavel's badge. Neither is his. Pavel looks up and remembers to be offended. We share during tests. You share your factor, Eva says, the slowness of her tone a scalpel. Do you also share your toothbrush? Barbara folds her arms. Pavel, he cracks. Vale promised an experiential piece, he says. A reveal for our open house. A donor who is bored by charts would see that we can respond to threats. We'd show that a rumor does not scare our robots. You created the rumor, Hannah says, calm and cold, and broke a robot with it. Pavel's hands plead without words. The sabotage was staged, he says, staged to demonstrate resilience. Marketing told me. He stops because there is no marketing in the room yet. Tomas rubs his face. You staged resilience instead of building it. Sebastian keeps his voice quiet. Who touched the OTA server? Pavel shuts his eyes. I rolled back one bot to a safe dev build. It was easier to demonstrate failure. I planned to restore it after the video. I did not intend damage. The stair was supposed to be blocked. You didn't intend gravity either, Malin says. It came anyway. Hannah nods once. You're done here, she says without flourish. Not because you failed, because you sought failure and invited it to our house. I will decide whether we have police speak to you after I speak to legal. Leave your badge. Pavel blanches. His gaze flits to the interns, to find a version of himself there that will feel sorry for him. No one offers it. He places his badge on the table like a card in a trick he lost and leaves. Hannah breathes out through her nose, then looks at Sebastian. This does not, I think, fully solve the veil problem. Not yet, Sebastian says, but it shrinks the stage. Scene 9. Veil. They meet Crispin Vale at a loud cafe that makes you shout to seem casual. He smiles like a person whose teeth have seen invoices. You cannot keep running the same trick in new rooms, Sebastian says without ordering. I can, Crispin says, but it's boring. I prefer new rooms with old stories. You projected a golem in a sacred neighborhood, Rafe says, not smiling. It's a flat trick. Worse, it's lazy. Crispin lifts a hand. I did not touch the synagogue. I used windows that wanted to participate. You used a city that wanted to be loved, Sebastian says. Not the same. Crispin leans back. You have to admit, donors come alive when their pulses do. I was, if anything, offering a generous service. Make your donors care is a universal brief. Donors care when staff don't lie to them, Hannah says, who has come because she has finished outsourcing her spine. You are not staff. You were not hired. You came anyway. Crispin nods. I will, of course, cease any involvement. Consider this a teachable dash. Hannah stands. You will receive a letter from our council, she says, and one from the community you commodified. It will be educational. Crispin's smile thins. I sense that the appetite for immersive experiences is diminished at this table. Rafe grins without humor. We're cured. Crispin's eyes flick to Sebastian's legal pad, where a slip peeks out of a mylar sleeve, a reflexive, protective behavior even in a cafe. He doesn't see the slip's content. He sees possession. Still collecting, Crispin says. Tell your collector friends hello. We don't have collector friends, Sebastian says. We have colleagues who like paper more than applause. Crispin leaves the way a cat leaves a room it owned a moment ago, and has decided to own again later. Hannah sits back down and puts both hands flat on the table, as if to keep it from walking away. Scene 10. Reconstruction. That evening, they stage the lab's staged haunting safely to teach without gloating. Malin builds a safe standalone shelf panel with a hair-thin filament and a theatrical fog teaser away from any collections. She demonstrates the principle behind last week's library trick, because lessons travel better when they rhyme. Barbora watches like a person who will no longer accept charm as a substitute for design. Indira remotely pushes a signed update to a test bot on a closed network through an IDS they've now locked. The bot rejects an old certificate. The room feels indignation like weather. Rafe walks donors through the geometry of old glass and reflections at the open house that Hannah refuses to cancel. He teaches them where to stand to see the city write tall men on panes and where to stand to see the tram again. He says nothing about the golem. He says everything about angles. Imani and Irina mount a small pop-up display in the reading room. Margins speak. What paper whispers to other paper? 2 photographs. The Yiddish pamphlet. The faint reversed supplemental catalogue. Shelf XIII. A caption that explains offset and patience. Below, a note. This is how rumours leave fingerprints. Donors read. Some become less bored than usual by charts. Scene 11. The talk. In a lecture room that a projector has decided to sulk in, Sebastian gives a short talk to staff, donors, and a few invited community members. The story of the golem is not about granite, he says. It's about obligations. A community imagines a being to defend it when laws and neighbors do not. It is tempting to borrow that story because it fits on a phone. Resist the temptation. Let stories help the people they belong to. He shows the tram reflection clip next to the tourist video. He shows how the frame lies. He shows the bot logs next to the certificate failure next to the debug jig. He shows the theatre mud recipe without glamour. You should leave tonight with less adrenaline than you arrived, he says. That is a good ending. If you need more adrenaline, run in the cold. Or better, fund scholarships. Jakub in the back nods once, small and sufficient. Scene 12, dinner. Irina's flat smells like onions at the right time and cardamom at the perfect one. Her wife, Marta, feeds them and mocks them with a precision that proves affection. You let boys with expensive fog walk in front of you, she says, dishing stew. Now you have complicated paperwork. Next time, throw a bucket of water on them. I'll add it to the field kit, Maylin says. Irina brings out the pamphlet again, because archivists know that looking is a form of dessert. They set up the copy stand beside a bowl of olives. Under different light, the bell-in-a-box watermark shows a fraction of a date. 1922 is not fully legible. 19 is bold, 22 is a hope. They photograph it anyway. Marta asks Sebastian what it is with him and paper. He shrugs. Paper is time that forgives, he says. It lets you see and hold and not be finished. Very romantic, Marta says. I'm glad my wife gave you a pamphlet and not a cat. Rafe watches the two of them, archivist and detective, bend over the page. He thinks about the season's strange courtship, someone who knows what they like offering them a breadcrumb at a time. He wonders, not for the first time, if Sebastian is the mark or the one writing the marks back. Scene 13, the letter. In the morning, Hannah sends 2 notes, to donors. A brief, plain account of what happened, what was corrected, and what will change. It thanks them for curiosity without flattering their appetite for spectacle. It invites them to a future demo titled Failures We Meant to Make and Ones We Didn't. To Vale, a cease and desist, a demand letter, and a blandness that makes lawyers smile like cats. She forwards a copy to Jakub with a short apology she doesn't perform. He replies with a blessing disguised as a scheduling email. Pavel sends a longer email full of injury and justification to a BCC list of colleagues. Someone forwards it. It lands everywhere Sebastian is willing to keep receipts. He files it and doesn't reply. That, he knows, is how some fires stop wanting oxygen. Scene 14. The handwriting on the wall. Imani and Sebastian stop by Kniharství ve Sklonku, a bookbinder's shop down a side street where leather remembers being a thing that lived. Behind the counter, a man with hands like patience and a magnifier pushed up on his forehead, Aldrich Harville. Sebastian lays out a small portfolio of images, binder's tickets collected over years, watermarks, the peculiar circle of Alonso and Lyle, with the casual hunger of a person confessing a habit to someone who shares it. Aldrich's eyes warm. You Americans come with a suitcase of ghosts, he says. I like it. They tip well. Sebastian laughs. We can pay in questions. Also in euros. They show him the bell-in-a-box watermark and the faint binder's circle from the foredge in episode 1. Aldrich, who has never seen episode 1, nods anyway, because paper speaks in a voice older than formats. This mark, he says, tapping the bell, I have seen in a Prague book repaired in the 1930s with American stock. The man who did it worked for a shipping firm during the war. He lined spines with whatever paper stuck to his hands that day. Some came from boxes labeled San Francisco. You could find more in private libraries that never wanted to be public. He smirks. Good luck. Imani's eyes flash. Do you know any? Aldrich winks like a person who plans to owe you a favor. I'll ask people who don't like to be asked. Sebastian leaves a card that is not for clients but for conspirators, binders, dealers, people who hold books like the last unburned slices of a city. On the back he has written, We trade footnotes. Aldrich tucks it into a drawer that has old tickets in it and aging candies for the small, equally serious visitors. Scene 15, the confession you don't hear. Pavel meets Crispin on a bridge because men like these cannot resist scenery. Pavel talks too fast. Crispin listens the way money does. There is no microphone in the scene. There is only the city, which will remember that 2 men built a small disaster together and each was careful to let the other take the larger share. They part with a handshake. Crispin smiles for a camera that isn't there and for once is wrong. Scene 16, the report. Back at the loft, Sebastian writes. He files 2 documents. CIIR, Incident Report, The Golem That Didn't Walk. Summary. A staged sabotage rolled back a patrol bot to a vulnerable build. A third party simultaneously manufactured a golem illusion using reflections and retro-reflective material. Theatrical mud used to plant footprints. Findings: OTA certificate validation weak, debug ports open, shared two-factor authentication devices, opportunistic outside actor, Veil, used narrowband pings as timing cue but did not penetrate network. Insider, Pavel, performed rollback. Recommendations: lock debug, harden OTA, separate networks, zero tolerance for shared factors, narrative controls for donor events, community courtesy protocol for sacred neighborhoods, aftercare, staff debrief, community check-in, donor messaging that refuses spectacle, addendum to ARC file, Shelf XIII, Prague offset. Item: Yiddish pamphlet margin showing reversed Latin supplemental catalogue, Shelf XIII, bell-in-a-box watermark. Inference: offset likely from a 1922 Bay Area private catalogue or a later reprint forgery. Material reached Prague mid-century via shipping repair stock. Binder oral tradition to be pursued. Contact Aldrich Harville. Open questions. Why place this breadcrumb in a lab reading room that Irina visits? Is the sender simply moving us along, or is someone tracing our movement to map their catalogue? He doesn't write that last question in the file. He writes it on a sticky and hides it under his coffee mug. Some doubts, like coffee, shouldn't be cold. Scene 17. A knock. At midnight, the loft's hallway makes the polite sound of footsteps that prefer not to be noticed. A thin envelope slides under the door like a stage direction offered by the play to the actor, who will ignore it and thereby prove worth. Sebastian does not pick it up with his fingers. He uses a spatula and glycine, and the quiet choreography of someone who knows how narratives get contaminated. Inside, a sliver of laid stock, torn cleanly from a larger page. At its top, pencil, 13:2. Below, a word in careful print, as if trying on a voice. Prague. On the back, a dotted outline like someone traced a binder's ticket and then thought better of confessing. He logs it and sleeved it and does not swear. He makes tea. He writes 13-2 on the whiteboard under 13-1 and circles both, twice. Rafe appears in the doorway to the kitchenette like a friendly ghost who left his coat somewhere. You could pretend to be surprised, he says. I'm saving that for something else, Sebastian says. What something? When the person who sends these realizes we don't fetch, Sebastian says, we read. Rafe nods at the envelope. They're writing a love story and hoping you forget to check the receipts. Sebastian smiles without heat. They haven't met our librarian. Scene 18, the call. Jakub calls. We saw your talk, he says. The board thanks you for telling people where to stand. Someone left a candle on the steps tonight. We put it out. We will always be doing that. Putting out candles people leave at altars we don't share. If your work can make there be fewer candles, we will owe you tea. Keep your tea, Sebastian says. We owe you work. And a copy of a photograph of a bell that rode a boat. Jakub chuckles. Bring it. Scene 19. Weather. They leave Prague in a rain that calls itself ethical, steady, unhurried, committed to the long term. In the plane, Imani writes a thank you to Irina that contains a recipe, okra stew, and 3 questions about a shipping log from 1939. Mei Lin stores the retro-reflective square in a bag labelled Teaching Props. Rafe scrolls through donor comments, deleting the ones that want to sound smart, and keeping the ones that are surprised by how interesting edges can be. Sebastian reads a photocopy of an invoice Aldrich emailed. Alonso and Lyle, Telegraph Avenue, binding repairs for port books, 1922 to 1924. It is a ledger that remembers work done for people who wanted seams to hold. He circles an address he knows too well. Indira, before her connection drops, sends a snapshot of a spectrum capture with a note. Vale stopped pinging. Then another, for now. Sebastian looks out a window that the weather has made into lath. They always stop, he murmurs, right before they think of a new place to start. Scene 20, Berkeley again. Back in the loft, the whiteboard holds the season like a patient river. 13/S, Alonso and Lyle, Telegraph. 13-1, Berkeley. 13-2, Prague. Underneath, in Imani's hand, what's the sender's exit? Sebastian erases exit and writes profit. The question mark hangs there like geometry. Mei Lin flips through a notebook. We still don't know what Shelf XIII is supposed to be beyond a rumour. Catalogue sections? A binder's private joke? A dealer's fiction? Or a compulsion, Rafe says. Someone's. On next week's docket, Imani says, Varanasi. A curse that looks like CO and sounds like funding. Sebastian grins. Where we bring carbon monoxide and boundaries. Bring tea, Maylin says, already printing a bracket that will hold a tool that doesn't exist yet and will by morning. They leave the whiteboard with its list of unresolved joys. The vault door clicks into place. Outside, a trash truck does the city's heavy lifting. Inside, the last thing to sleep is the envelope that says 13-2, which does not sleep so much as wait. Next episode, Ritra's breath.